In this sense, identifications belong to the imaginary. They are phantasmatic efforts of alignment, loyalty, ambiguous and cross-corporeal cohabitations. They unsettle the I. They are the sedimentation of the we in the constitution of any I, the structuring present of alterity in the very formulation of the I. Identifications are never fully and finally made. They are incessantly reconstituted and as such are subject to the volatile logic of iterability. They are that which is constantly marshaled, consolidated, contested, and on occasion compelled to give away. 1993. The effort now to think the question of distinctiveness of the logic within which the radicalized and ethnicized body is constituted discursively through the regulatory normative ideal of compulsive Eurocentrism for one of a different world cannot be simply grafted on the arguments briefly sketched above, but they have received an enormous and original impetus from this tangled and unconcluded argument, which demonstrates beyond the shadow of a doubt that the question and the theorization of identity is a matter of considerable political significance and is only likely to be advanced when both the necessity and the impossibility of identities and the suturing of the psychic and the discursive in their constitution are fully and unambiguously acknowledged. Two. From Pilgrim to Tourist, or A Short History of Identity, Zygmunt Bauman. Identity continues to be the problem it was throughout modernity, says Douglas Kellner, and adds that far from identity disappearing in contemporary society, it is rather reconstructed and redefined, though just a few paragraphs later he casts doubts on the feasibility of the self-same reconstruction and redefinition, pointing out that identity today becomes a freely chosen game, a theatrical representation of the self, and that when one radically shifts identity at will, one might lose control. Kellner's ambivalence reflects the present ambivalence of the issue itself. One hears today of identity and its problems more often than ever before in modern times. And yet, one wonders whether the current obsession is not just another case of the general rule of things being noticed only ex post facto, when they vanish, go bust or fall out of joint. I propose that while it is true that identity continues to be the problem, this is not the problem it was throughout modernity. Indeed, if the modern problem of identity was how to construct an identity and keep it solid and stable, the postmodern problem of identity is primarily how to avoid fixation and keep the options open. In the case of identity, as in other cases, the catchword of modernity was creation. The catchword of postmodernity is recycling. Or one may say that if the media, which was the message of modernity, was the photographic paper, think of the restlessly swelling family albums, tracing page by yellowing page, the slow accretion of irreversible and non-erasable identity yielding events. The ultimately postmodern medium is the videotape, eminently erasable and reusable, calculated not to hold anything forever, admitting today's event solely on condition of effacing yesterday ones, oozing the message of universal until further noticeness of everyday deemed worthy of recording. The main identity bound anxiety of modern times was the worry about durability. It is the concern with commitment avoidance today. Modernity building steel and concrete, postmodernity in biodegradable plastic. Identity as such is a modern invention. To say that modernity led to the disembedding of identity, or that is rendered the identity unencumbered, is to assert a pleonasm, since at not time did identity become a problem. It was a problem from its birth, was born as a problem, that is, as something one something one needs do, as something one needs do something about, as a task. Could exist only as a problem. It was a problem and thus ready to be born, precisely because of that experience of underdetermination and free floatingness, which came to be articulated ex post facto as disembedment. Identity will not have congealed into a visible and graspable entity in any other but the disembedded or unencumbered form. One thinks of identity wherever one is not sure of where one belongs. That is, one is not sure how to place oneself among the evident variety of behavioral styles and patterns, and how to make sure that people around will accept this placement as right and proper, so that both sides will know how to go on each other's presence. Identity is a name given to the escape sought from that uncertainty. Hence, identity, though ostensibly a noun, behaves like a verb, albeit a strange one to be sure. It appears only in the future tense, though all too often hypostasized as an attribute of a material entity. Identity has the ontological status of a project and a postulate. To say postulated identity is to say one word too many, as neither there is nor can there be any other identity but a postulated one. Identity is a critical projection of what is demanded and or sought upon what is, or more exactly still, an oblique assertion of the inadequacy or incompleteness of the latter. Identity entered modern mind and practice dressed from the start as an individual task. It was upon the individual to find escape from uncertainty, not for the fears and not for the last time. Socially created problems were to be resolved by individual efforts, and collective maladies healed by primitive medicine. Not that the individuals were left to their own initiative and that their acumen was trusted, quite the contrary, putting the individual responsibility for self-formation on the agenda spawned the host of trainers, coaches, teachers, counselors, and guides, all claiming to hold superior knowledge of what identities could be acquired and held. The concepts of identity building and of culture, that is, of the idea of the individual incompetence, of the need of collective breeding, and of the importance of skillful and knowledgeable breeders, were and could only be born together. The disembedded identity simultaneously ushered in the individual's freedom of choice and the individual's dependency on expert guidance. Modern life as pilgrimage. The figure of the pilgrim was not a modern invention. It is as old as Christianity, but modernity gave it a new prominence and a seminally novel twist. When Rome lay in ruins, humbled, humiliated, and sacked and pillaged by Alaric nomads, St. Augustine jotted down the following observation. It is recorded of Cain that he built a city, while Abel, as though he were merely a pilgrim on earth, built none. True city of the saints is in heaven. Here on earth, says St. Augustine, Christians wander as on pilgrimage through time, looking for the kingdom of eternity. For pilgrims through time, the true is elsewhere. The true place is always some distance, some time away. Wherever the pilgrim may be now, it is not where he ought to be, and not where he dreams of being. The distance between the true world and this world here and now is made of the mismatch between what is to be achieved and what has been. The glory and gravity of the future destination bases the present and makes light of it. For the pilgrim, what purpose may the city serve? For the pilgrim, only streets make sense, not the houses. Houses them want to rest and relax, to forget about the destination. Even the streets, though, may prove to be obstacles rather than help, traps rather than through God fairs. They might misguide, divert from the straight path, lead astray. Judeo-Christian culture, writes Richard Sennett, is as its very roots about experiences of spiritual dislocation and homelessness. Our faith began at odds with place. We are pilgrims through time was under the pen of Saint Augustine, not an exhortation but a statement of fact. We are pilgrims whatever we do, and there is little we can do about it, even if we wish it. Earthly life is but a brief overture of the eternal persistence of the soul. Only few will reach and have the ability to compose that overture themselves in tune with with the music of heavenly spheres to make their fate into consciously embraced destiny. These few would need to escape the distractions of the town. The desert is the habitat they must choose. The desert of the Christian hermit was set at a distance from the hurly-burly of family life, away from the town and the village, from the mundane, from the polis. The desert meant putting a distance between oneself and one's duties and obligations. The warrant and the agony of being with others, being looked at by others, being framed and molded by their scrutiny, demands and expectations. Here in mundane quotidianity, one's hands were tied, and so were one's thoughts. Here, horizon was tightly packed with huts, barns, copses, groves, and church towers. Here, whatever one moved, one was in a place, and being in place means staying put, doing what the place needed to be done. The desert, on the contrary, was a land not yet sliced into places. And for that reason, it was the land of self-creation. The desert, said Edmond Jebes, is a sphere where one step gives way to the next, which undoes it, and the horizon means hope for a tomorrow which speaks. You do not go to the desert to find identity, but to lose it, to lose your personality, to become anonymous. And then something extraordinary happens. You hear silence speak. The desert is the archetype and the greenhouse of the raw, bare, primal and bottom line freedom that is but the absence of bounds. What made the medieval hermits feel so close to God in the desert was the feeling of being themselves godlike, unbound by habits and convention, by the needs of their own bodies and other people's soul, by their past deeds and present actions. In the words of the present-day theorists, one will say that the hermits were the first to live through the experience of these embedded, unencumbered selves. They were godlike because whatever they did ab nihilo. Their pilgrimage to God was an exercise in self-construction. This is why the church, wishing to be the sole connecting line to God, resented the hermits from the start, and soon went out of its way to force them into monastic orders under the close superstition of rules and routine. The Protestants, as Weber told us, accomplished a feat unthinkable for the lonely hermits of yore. They became inner worldly pilgrims. They invented the way of embarking on pilgrimage without leaving home, and of leaving home without becoming homeless. This they could do, however, only because the desert stretches and reaches deep into their towns, right up to their doorsteps. They did not venture into the desert. It was the world of their daily life which was turning more and more like the desert. Like the desert, the world turned placeless. The familiar feature has been obliterated, but the new ones which were meant to replace them were given the kind of permanence, once thought as unique to the sand dunes. In the new post-Reformation city of modernity, the desert began on the other side of the door.